Welcome back into Wake Up America. You're taking a look at footage from Friday when 4 Americans were kidnapped in Mexico after crossing the border in Texas for a medical procedure. The 4 Americans were reportedly caught at an intersection before they were dragged from their white minivan and thrown into the back of that white pickup truck right there. Since Friday, no one has seen or heard from any of them.
Joining us now is former FBI agent, former Navy SEAL, and author of Sheep No More, Jonathan Gilliam, and former acting Border Patrol Commissioner Mark Morgan. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Mark, the State Department now talking more about travel safety ahead of spring break this month, but they're not saying much about the 4 Americans kidnapped in Mexico. Listen.
We're standing ready to provide all appropriate consular assistance. We do also remind Americans about the existing travel guidance when it comes to this particular part of Mexico. The travel advisory for Tamaulipas State remains at level 4. Do not travel. We encourage Americans to heed that advice.
Okay. Mark, why is the administration not saying more about these 4 Americans?
Well, it's very possible they may not know a whole lot more. What we do know, though, is apparently they traveled from Brownsville to the city of Matamoros, which is a city within the state of Tamaulipas, which is right now one of the most violent areas in the entire country of Mexico. As the Department of State just said, it's a level 4 travel advisory. That's equivalent to the same travel advisory we have for American citizens going to Iraq and Afghanistan. So there's still a lot that we need to know that we don't know. If it's true that they went there to buy medicine, there's a lot that just doesn't add up here.
Jonathan, the FBI is now offering a $50,000 cash reward for information that ultimately leads to their return. So it's been 5 days now since they were kidnapped. What, in your opinion, are we looking at here?
Well, I don't think it looks good. I mean, 2 of those individuals were awake or conscious. 2 of them did not look like they were doing good at all, or if even alive. And you do not want to be in that state of condition in that area, because the medical treatment, you're not going to get medical treatment in that particular area like that. What does frighten me, though, is everybody that works for the Biden administration, including this spokesperson for the State Department, they sound exactly like Pete Buttigieg when he talks about train derailments. It's exact language that they're using here, and it does not, as an American, does not give me a positive feeling that they're going to be there to try to actually get these people back if possible. So yeah. I know that they're working with the attachés, the legal attachés in Mexico. They will work with some of the police, but the problem is you cannot trust anyone down there, even people that you think that you can that are in law enforcement.
Yeah, Mark, that's what I was going to ask you is how can we trust them in Mexico? And do you believe that the premise that this was a simple case of mistaken identity?
Yeah, I think John's right. We can't trust, and I know he has. And I spent 20 years in the FBI. I was actually special agent in charge of the FBI's El Paso division.
Right.
So we had what we called trusted partners. But even then, it was hard to trust those so-called trusted partners. That's the reality. And that's why I say a lot doesn't add up here. Again, it's not uncommon for U.S. citizens to go to Mexico to buy drugs, medicine, I should say, because it's a lot cheaper. So the fact that this happened, either was completely a misidentification, mistargeting,
right,
or
but
there's
Mark,
something we don't know.
If that is the case, if this was just a case of mistaken identity, wouldn't they be dropped off at a convenience store or something? I mean, right now, 5 days later, this feels like it's a hostage situation. I mean, we haven't heard anything to that effect that we know about. Maybe the administration has, maybe somebody has, but why haven't they been returned?
Yeah, I think those are all good questions, and I think this goes to John's point. I agree with him. When this happened, the reason why you don't see this happen in more U.S. citizens is because usually all hell comes down from the U.S. government. I haven't seen the same sense of veracity and tenacity coming from this administration to say, hey, we're gonna use every tool that we have from the United States government to get these individuals back and find out what happened and prevent this from happening again. We haven't seen that same level of commitment and outrage from this administration.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan, I want to move on now to the news out of Atlanta. 23 people now charged with domestic terrorism and what's being called a coordinated criminal attack on Cop City. Now, the Atlanta police chief spoke last night. Here's what he had to say.
What you do not have the right to do is to attack members of law enforcement. What you do not have the right to do is attack other citizens who may be there to legitimately demonstrate their views on these issues, but then are used as cover to launch these type of attacks. You place them in harm. And we are in a position, Mr. President, to take actions that we deem appropriate to protect the First Amendment and to hold individuals accountable that would desire to do harm in our city.
Yeah, Jonathan, only 2 of them were actually from Georgia. 2 others were from out of the country. Your reaction to this?
Well, I've dealt with these groups before when I was in the FBI in New York, and they similar group bombed the military recruiting center in Times Square in 2008 with a pipe bomb at 3 in the morning.
Right.
These individuals, what you got to understand is no matter who they say they're with, they're all a part of the same ideological belief, and it's deeply rooted in a communist leftist ideology. And what bothers me about in law enforcement, I'll give a little bit of criticism to law enforcement here, is that the speech that chief just used tells me that he does not understand the First Amendment. The First Amendment gives you the right to peacefully protest, but it does not give you the right to show up and continuously harass anyone. And that's what these types of protests have become. They're just complete harassment. And in these cases, they're little mini battles. And that is not covered by the First Amendment.
Yeah. I also thought the left wanted police to be better trained. So why would you attack a police training center? It just doesn't really make sense. Jonathan Gilliam, Mark Morgan, thanks so much for breaking that down for us. Good to see you.